Good morning and welcome to the Engerati studio here at European Utility Week. I'm Claire Falkvay, the editor of Metering International. And with me today I have Pieter Coetzee, who is the Senior Director of Smart Grid Development for Itron. Pieter, it's really nice to see you again. I hope that you're well.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks for having me here.
Before we came on air, we were talking a little bit around the development of the smart grid generally. And one of the things that you mentioned is that we have an idea of what the ultimate goal is. We want a fully integrated, connected grid. What do you see as being the next step that is I think we've wrapped our heads around what smart metering means. What is the next step, though, in this evolution that we're needing to manage?
Well, assuming the problem of communication has been solved, which to my mind has not quite yet been done yet. So we're only really starting to put the infrastructure in place to enable us to really benefit from things like smart metering. So the next step for us is obviously to start showing the business benefits around smart grid, to actually enable those things to be made real. And one of the issues we had in the past was our ability to reliably communicate with devices out in the grid, to be able to have a network to allow those applications, the new benefits to be shown quickly, to be integrated quickly into the network. This is the next big challenge for us.
Why has the communication not been as reliable as it should be?
The field is a difficult world. When you start looking into the electrical grid, the network, the actual endpoints, the environment out there, it's not uniform. The cabling, the reticulation, the power environment is really, really rough. So it's been very tough to have reliable, manageable communication to an environment that's not uniform, that's not homogeneous. So the ability to actually create standards and manageability and transparency of a multi-million point endpoint environment on communication has been a really, really big challenge at a standardization level. I think we've reached maturity now in that. The technology is at a point where it's manageable and where it's scalable, and most important probably where it's secure. So now we can start really making those benefits count.
So assuming that within the next 18 months we get to a point where we're feeling that the communications is reliable enough, what then? What is the big challenge that the utilities are going to start facing?
Utilities are seeing a lot of advantages coming through from normal operations, from operational improvements. So just having these benefits coming out of the grid, being able to actually have multiple sensors and giving that information through to the back end and then starting to analyze that into a meaningful business way. This is the big challenge, the next big step. But also we've seen from a benchmark point of view that digitizing the utility, whether this is across customer service, back-end operations, field operations, those utilities that have actually made the investment of digitizing the environment, of automating the environment, are performing on average 30-40% better than their counterparts who haven't done this. So the payback has really been there. And I think looking at the history of utilities, not many of them have believed that the payback is there. So our challenge has been to try and convince them and say, look at the bigger picture. It's not just about a grid or a metering issue. This is about the whole operations experience, the ability to actually engage multiple services across the same network, to provide better service to customers, to really make the utility a lot more efficient.
Do you have any specific examples of utilities that have shown some of those real benefits that you're able to share with us?
It's actually, there's quite a few case studies available on this, and one of the things that we do as Itron is we work very closely with our partners that's in the consulting field, that's in the integration environment. And when you start looking at the use cases, the business cases of taking what Itron is providing and giving it through to the other elements in the utility. So we have quite a few examples, very good examples of investor-owned utilities in the United States. That is really, when you start benchmarking public performance of those utilities versus their counterparts that haven't taken the step in digitizing, the difference is extreme. And it's official and it's open, the information is available. So it's not something up for debate, it's something that is there. So I think looking at specific examples, if you go to the investor utilities in the US, there's quite a few of those. And I think the best places to start would be to look at the consulting type companies, the systems integrators, people like Accenture, Capgemini, IBM, that are thought leaders and have been able to pull this information together. And I think it's time utilities really start looking at that, start looking at the bigger picture, of which Itron is an important component, but it's only one of the components to make the whole thing better.
So the important part of any smart grid rollout is also realizing that this is a collaboration amongst partners. This is not something a utility could or even should attempt to do on its own.
There is no doubt.
A huge ecosystem that needs to be tapped in order to make this successful.
There is no doubt, and this is why our collaboration with Cisco has been so important. Because one of the things that Cisco is very efficient at doing is to have an ecosystem from a development point of view, to have different partners from different fields being able to collaborate onto the same communications environment.
Okay.
This is not something that Itron has traditionally done outside or to the scope that a partner like Cisco has done. So to be able to actually make that easy for people to come on board, to be able to show the benefits, that ecosystem and the depth and the breadth of that ecosystem is critical.
When we spoke earlier, you mentioned that you had some concerns around the ability of our policies to be keeping up with the development. Could you expand on that a little bit?
I think if you look at regulation and you start at European regulation, the intention, the political intention of 2020, the ability to actually have energy efficiency and reduction in carbon is very noble. And a lot of the regulations are driving that. But those regulations are not really taking cognizance of the fact that new applications, new grid applications also needs to be within the framework and the target framework. This is not just about a mandate for smart metering. It's this mandate to actually make a very intelligent grid and a more intelligent utility environment. And I don't think regulations has kept up by really driving that environment, driving those goals. I think we have a lag in regulations, this is for sure.
And of course it's important that the regulations are there to protect everybody, to ensure that there's standardization.
It's an increase of competitiveness as well, at a European level, at an EU level, and in general, the investment in new technology is always a good thing, but it's something that doesn't necessarily come natural within the short life cycle of companies, their investment cycle. There has to be some sort of incentivization, some sort of regulation, some sort of push coming from government, because that investment now into creating a multi-lane highway, communication highway out there, the benefits will only come 5 years, 10 years in the future. And that's a government type investment, that's a policy investment. It's not necessarily something that's only driven by the private sector, because then you get a far slower growth.
Okay. One of the things, and I'm taking advantage of the fact that you have had some experience working in Africa. Utilities
Yes.
there, I think, don't always see the benefit of a smart grid. The argument is, well, we don't even have power, why would we need a smart grid? You want to control load, we have step tariffs. You want to shift load, use ripple control. What do you see the benefits of the smart grid being, particularly in an African context?
It's about manageability. Really creating a smart grid environment creates the platform for improving efficiencies 2, 3, 4-fold. And convincing those utilities just at a single or 2-level business case, for instance, theft detection is a big issue there.
Yes.
Or load capacity management. These are singular dimensional elements. Tying all those together into a bigger plan has been the challenge. We've seen that the initial investment is paid back by the initial use cases, but we've not seen enough utilities taking the longer term view and say, well, what we're putting in now, if we actually make provision for things in the future, then we'll have a far better environment to be more efficient. And the challenges for African utility is the same as for European, but they even have a better use case because they're more verticalized, they have less barriers in terms of doing things quickly, they have more control. More control from a government point of view. So their ability to actually move could supersede the ability of utilities in Europe to a large extent. And because you have a use case or a business case, an economic viable business case on things like theft detection, all they need to do is just take that and it will pay back the investment to provide a grid environment, a communication environment for more use cases. So our challenge has been to take their experience to a broader level.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to
Yes.
talk about your IPv6 platform. What is that about?
IPv6 is not a new thing, but it's something that really is starting to gain momentum now. This is a standard that at many levels has been 20 years in the making, and it's reached a point of maturity where everybody is starting to realize that your previous IPv4 type solutions is limited in terms of what you can do. So for us, we're only a small part of the Internet of Things. By 2020, you'll have 50 billion devices connected. The only way to do that is through IPv6. This is why Itron has made the definitive decision to actually use that at the core of our platform. Because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when that environment becomes real. And we would want to be part of that because we think we can be a very important anchor in providing that network out to our utilities and our customers.
Okay. Well, if you want to know more about the Itron IPv6 platform, have a look at the webinar that's on the Engerati website. Pieter, thank you so much. Unfortunately, time is not with us this morning. From European Utility Week, I'm Claire Falkvane. Thanks for watching.